Next article that we are moving into is related to dagger in the heart of liberty. Selvi versus State of Karnataka, a judgment of three judges on May 5, 2010, Supreme Court considered the constitutional validity of three tests conducted against the will of a person, narco analysis, polygraph test and brain electrical activation profile. The court came to the following conclusion. Hence, our conclusion is that the results obtained through the involuntary and administration of either the impugnated test come with the scope of testimonial compulsion, thereby attracting the protective shield of Article 20, Class 3. Therefore, it is our considered opinion that subjecting a person to the impunged technique in an involuntary manner violates the prescribed bounds of privacy. In the light of this conclusion, we hold that no individual should be subjected to any of the techniques in question, whether in the context of investigation in criminal cases or otherwise. An invasion of life or personal liberty must meet the threefold requirement of legality, which postulates the existence of law, need defined in the terms of legitimate state aim, proportionally, which ensures a rational nexus between the object and the means adopted to achieve them. The government would not have introduced and passed the Criminal Procedure Bill 2022. The bill is praised an attempt to overreach the Supreme Court and to deny the fundamental right to liberty and privacy, two of the most precious rights in the democracy. The purpose of the bill was to expand the ambit of the person covered under the law and use of modern techniques for taking body measurement and legal sanctions thereto. There is a definition of measurement which includes biological samples and the analysis and behavioral attributes or other such examination tests. The measurements will be stored and preserved for 75 years and can be shared with any law enforcement agency. Law enforcement agency mentioned in the section. Home Minister verbally assured the Rajya Sabha that the technique prohibited in Selvi will not be employed, but refused to incorporate the assurance in the bill. The other three questions remained unanswered. The government resorted to the underogable rights. The other three questions remained unanswered. The government resorted to the usual binary arguments. If the prisoner have the human rights, so do victims. The bill is not about victims but about arrestees, detainees and prisoners. The other argument was look at our low conviction rates. Of course, look at them, but the low rate is because of negligent in investing officers, poor quality of prosecutors, shoddy record keeping and overburdened judges. These constraints will not go away by violating the human rights of the arrestees, detainees and prisoners. Next article that we are moving into is related to India's Balancing Act echoes from the past. India's position and statement on Russia's predecessor state, Soviet Union, and its armed intervention euphemism for invasion in Hungary, Czechoslovakia and Afghanistan. On the other hand, India's response to Israel, British, French invasion of Egypt and long years of US armed involvement in Vietnam and its Iraq war followed a different trajectory. It now focuses on the need to abide by the UN Charter, respect sovereignty and territorial integrity of the state, and to resolve issues through the dialogues and negotiations. One sprang from the British-French reaction to Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser decision in July 1956 to nationalize the Suez Canal. Till then, the canal was controlled by Anglo-French company. After a period of desultory talk, both countries along with Israel decided to launch a war against Egypt in October. India was outraged by this action of the colonial power. Nehru condemned the action and remained in contact with the US, which insisted that its allies Britain, France, Israel withdraw their forces. They did so but not before UN General Assembly to sought the same, and US threatened Britain with destabilizing its currency. A strong section of Hungarian political class, supported by students and others, sought to break away from Soviet domination. It wanted that charts its own socialist path and withdraw from the Warsaw Pact. Ultimately, Soviet Union invaded Hungary and anti-Soviet forces were brutally suppressed. Unlike this position on Egypt, Nehru initially did not openly speak against the Soviet. Indian representative abstained in International General Assembly motion which was critical of Soviets. Public opinion in India was unhappy with Soviet action and criticized Nehru, who blatantly and publicly acknowledged Hungary's desire for autonomy despite Soviet threats of deleting their support on Jammu and Kashmir issue, which was then active matters in UN United Nations Security Council. 12 years later, beginning January 1968, Czechoslovakia witnessed a period of socialist liberation under a reformist leader. Soviet Union with other Warsaw Pact nations finally decided that they could not allow this deviation from the accepted Soviet model. Hence, in August 1968, their armies invaded Czechoslovakia. Soviet-led action was criticized in India. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was sympathetic to the plight of Czechs, but refused to be swayed by the emotion. India abstained from voting on a resolution at the United Nations Security Council seeking to condemn the Soviet Union. In 1979, Soviet invaded Afghanistan. Gandhi returned to power a few days later after that. India supported the Soviets at the United Nations General Assembly. It blamed outside the power for interfering in Afghan affairs, accepted that Soviet forces had entered at Afghan request, and India had been assured that they would leave whenever Afghan wanted them to. Soviet occupation went on for a decade through this period. India was unhappy with the Soviet presence, but it never really publicly embraced it. Though privately it advised them to leave Afghanistan, Vietnam War was one of the defining struggles of Cold War, which India viewed in anti-colonial and ideological terms. Its sympathizers lay with the North, especially after US combat troops arrived in the South in 1965. US armed action after often brutal, using weapons such as napalm bomb outraged public opinion in India, and government did not restrain it, nor did it cushion its antipathy towards US action. 2003 US invasion of Iraq was based on false information. The government expressed anguish and parliament deplored it. India also refused a US request to send peacekeeping force to the country, and these were wise decisions, did not impact the growth of US-India ties. Next article that we are moving into is related to car in cube out. In less than a minute, a baler crushes the frame and converts the body shell into a crumbled metal cube, marking the final stage in the process of dismantling end-of-life vehicle ELV. The crushed frame is then sent to steel mills, which process into a smelter to eventually extract the steel and turn it into a bullet for use for construction inputs. But the steel is not only materials that comes out of scrapped car. Other major components include aluminium and copper, in addition to the parts such as batteries, electronic systems that company sells to recycle asset. The plant is a step in the direction of the government-led initiative to institute a circular economy in the auto sector, primarily with the aim of moving the end-of-life disposal of car from the largely unorganized setup and the organized side to ensure environment-friendly dismantling of these ELVs. Under the government policy, automated testing, sanctions and scrapping facilities such as MSTI, MMRPL are to be set up in phases, with the plans to set up 50 to 70 facilities for scrapping vehicles in the next 4 to 5 years. The government has notified the concession on motor vehicle tax for vehicle registered against submission of certificate deposit. Next article, before that, among the biggest challenges from the formalized vehicle scrapping units face is the competition from their informal counterpart, who derive better economies by deploying a less meticulous process. For formal unit to be sustainable in the long run, MSTA officials said minimum scale of operation will be necessary, and for more people to bring their vehicle to these units, several different stakeholders including center, state government and auto manufacturers will have to come to an agreement over the incentives being provided. Recycling of end of vehicle also promises a greater contribution to the circular economy and potential recycling of high value goods like semiconductors raw materials in the future. Next article that we are moving into is related to RBI household accept inflation to cross 10%, consumer confidence moves up. Central Bank's inflation expectation survey. According to Central Bank's consumer confidence survey, consumer confidence of the current period continued on its recovery path. As per March 2 to 11 round of RBI's inflation expectation survey of the household, median expectation for both 3 months and one year ahead rose by 10 basis points each to 10.7%, 10.8% respectively, as compared to January 2022 round. It was based on the response from 6,033 urban households. As per the Central Bank's consumer confidence survey conducted among 5,984 household, consumer confidence for March 2022 period continued on its recovery path. Next article that we are moving into is related to Pakistan successfully conducted test flight of ballistic missile Shahin-3. Flight test of surface to surface medium range ballistic missile Sahin 3. Next article is Lanka to seek $3 billion to stave off crisis, says new finance minister. Sri Lanka will need about $3 million in external assistance in the next 6 months to help restore supply of essential items, including fuel and medicine, in its finance minister told. The country will look to restructure the international sovereign bond and seek a moratorium on payment, and it's confident it can negotiate with the bondholders over $1 million payment due in July. The entire effort is not to go for a hard default. The island nation is on brink of bankruptcy, saddled with $25 million foreign debt over the next 5 years, nearly $7 million of which is due this year. Talks with IMF are expected later this month, and the government had turned to China and India for emergency loan to buy food and fuel. Next article, that's all. If you like the video, please do share, like, comment and subscribe. Thank you.